Hello and welcome to the West Asia Post with me, Radi Francis. This is our weekly show where we bring you an honest picture of West Asia. We tell you stories about the good and the bad, the truth and the violence. We bring you a fresh lineup of reports and news from one of the world's most volatile regions, a region that I call my home. Now, before we dive in our lineup for this week's edition of the West Asia Post, let's take a quick look at what's making the headlines across the region.
Damning report from press freedom watchdog says Israeli military has killed at least 20 journalists in the last 22 years and took no accountability for its actions. Saudi Arabia and Syria agree to restore diplomatic ties nearly a decade after Riyadh withdrew its representatives in 2011. COP28 host UAE calls on nations to phase out fuel emissions but stops before mentioning production of fossil fuels. Says the world is not ready to switch off use of gas and coal yet.
Stories about death and mourning have returned to Gaza, Palestine. Tensions and violence are back again between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Now, it all started when Israel launched a series of missile attacks on the besieged strip of Gaza, saying it is targeting Islamic Jihad militants. While on the ground, many of the casualties were civilians. We tell you more.
There is a lull in Gaza. Israel's deadly missile launches has sent the overcrowded enclave into mourning. It all started when Israel launched airstrikes on the strip. On target was the Palestinian militant group Islamic Jihad, but the casualties were mostly civilians. 5 children, 5 women, along with the head of the group and his deputy. Israeli and Western media have claimed the strike as an example of their missile precision. What they miss is the devastating toll it took on the lives of innocent families.
I hope to see my daughter as a bride wearing the white veil, but I covered her with a white shroud. Where is the justice? This is the unfair occupation.
These are the cries of parents who lost their young daughters in an unfortunate attack. Dania Adas and her sister Inam were both killed when Israeli jets hit the building next door. It was where the alleged Islamic Jihad leader Khalil al-Batini lived with his wife and daughter. The family was wiped out in the strike. Earlier this month, the militant group Islamic Jihad launched nearly 100 rockets towards Israel. This was after its members died in an Israel prison while on hunger strike. Fighter jets were still heard flying over the region. This is a sign that the Israeli offensive is still on. At least 30 people have been killed till now, and dozens are injured as the violence enters the weekend. Israel also reported a casualty on Thursday. 1 person was killed in a city close to Tel Aviv after the rocket hit an apartment complex. 5 people were also injured. Israel's casualties have been limited by its Iron Dome missile defense systems, which interpreted scores of rockets. Israel even used David's sling system for the first time, intercepting a rocket with it.
We are in the middle of the military operation, both offensive and defensive. Behind me is David's sling system with the commanders. This system successfully intercepted a rocket over Gush Dan. We will continue to act in defense and offensive until the end of the campaign.
This is the highest level of violence that has broken out in Gaza in recent months. Life on both sides of the Gaza-Israel border has been severely disrupted. Schools and colleges were closed in Gaza, and most businesses except banks and food stores were shuttered. Streets emptied as people took shelter from the Israeli air assaults. Efforts to call a ceasefire have not yielded any result. Egypt, Qatar and the United Nations have been working towards ending violence. But both sides have shown little interest in putting a stop to hostilities.
We are still in Palestine. Palestinians are marking 75 years of Nakba. Nakba in Arabic means the catastrophe. It is the catastrophe when thousands were killed and dragged out of their homes, their land, their soil, as Israel announced its creation in 1948. Now this year we bring you stories about people and refugees who were there, witnessed it all, and saw their homes snatched from them right in front of their eyes. Listen in.
Living in her modest home in the Gaza Strip, Amina Al-Dabai remembers the very different world in which she grew up more than 7 decades ago. She was born in 1934 in a pre-Israel Palestine. The Jewish majority was created on the 14th of May 1948. Dabai was still a child when Israel was created and is now among the millions of Palestinians who were made refugees after being thrown out from their own land. Palestinians call the dark day Nakba, Arabic for catastrophe. More than 600 communities were destroyed by the Jewish forces during that time, some even depopulated. It falls a day after Israel declared statehood in 1948, prompting an invasion by 5 Arab armies which were defeated. 75 years later, the memory of Nakba has become a rallying point in the Palestinian quest for statehood.
The army came and was wearing a keffiyeh, and people thought that it was the Jordanian army that came to protect us, and the people rejoiced.
The day after the disguised soldiers arrived, they returned with orders: leave load or be killed.
They stormed the mosque and killed everyone inside, about 1,000 people, and destroyed shops. I was young and saw it with my own eyes.
A different story unfolded across all towns, but the fate was the same. Jaber Visha was born in 1932 in the village of Beit Afa. It now falls near Ashkelon in southern Israel. Decades later, she painfully recounts how things were initially peaceful. Visha says when Jews first came to the area of the village, they did not harm them and they didn't harm the Jews. Yet, the coexistence did not last long. She remembers the day in May 1948 when it all shattered.
The situation was deplorable. I cannot describe to you the catastrophe that befell us. We did not get out easily. We left on our blood. But until today, I have not forgotten any piece or inch of my country, be it ever.
Many of those displaced assumed the move would be temporary. They locked their front doors and took large metal keys with them, hoping they would return. Those keys today have become a symbol of their plight and their overriding urge to return. In many homes, these keys are kept safely in a locked box under a bed or memorialized in drawings and embroidery.
Despite the agreements, whether our government agreed or otherwise, still have hope that I had a home here and my ancestors used to live here, and that one day I will return to it.
Israel claims Palestinians left voluntarily during the fighting. It has repeatedly rejected claims that its forces may have been responsible for war crimes, despite the fact that over 10,000 Arabs died at that time. Israel has steadfastly denied Palestinians the right to return, often a sticking point in peace talks, claiming it would be tantamount to a demographic surrender of the state's Jewish nature. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Much awaited news comes true for Syria. After more than a decade of isolation, Damascus is re-entering the Arab fold. In the next report, we tell you why now. What is the reason behind the rapprochement of Syria? And what would the country expect next? Listen in.
West Asia is leaving behind conflicts as it enters an era of political security and economic stability. In a big move, the Arab League has embraced Syria nearly a decade after the grouping shut its doors to Damascus following the long-fought civil war. The decision to bring Syria back into the Arab League was a unanimous one and was reportedly taken at the Arab foreign ministers meeting held in Cairo. The development comes after months of diplomatic efforts meeting in several capitals and a flurry of high-level talks. The re-entry is likely to be formalized next week as heads of states of Arab League meet in Saudi Arabia for a summit. Predictably, Riyadh has extended the invitation to Damascus. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad could well be rubbing shoulders with Arab kings and presidents on May 19th. The Arab League was established more than 80 years ago, and although the League holds little influence when geopolitics comes to play, the measure marks a big symbolic shift in world politics. Syria was shunned out from the bloc back in 2011. This was after Assad's brutal crackdown on its own civilians. Now, after 12 years of the war, the external powers that fed the conflict with money, mercenaries and arms are taking a step back. Ankara once backed Syrian rebels who were trying to topple Assad. And as time passed, Turkey seemed to have realized that Assad stands strong, as long as it has Russia's blessings. Just last week, Russia hosted a four-way meeting. The participants were Syria, Turkey, Iran and the host, Russia. The talks between foreign ministers of these countries were on the highest level since the civil war.
We see our task not only in politically consolidating the progress that has been made, but also in determining the general guidelines for further movement. If you do not object to such a methodology, then the best result of our communication could be an agreement to instruct experts to prepare a draft roadmap for Syria-Turkey normalization for the next ministerial meeting, which will then be reported to the heads of our states.
Developments in West Asia have taken a frustrating turn for the United States. Washington has for long opposed any effort to rehabilitate Assad. The Arab League seems to have disregarded US's reservations about Syria, a move symbolic of US's waning influence in the crucial region. West Asia in 2023 is looking at a foreign policy with a measure of strategic autonomy and free of Washington's selfish interests.
Turkey is heading to polls. The neck-to-neck electoral battle is taking the shape of a referendum on incumbent President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Now, will he be able to achieve a third term in power? Or will the tall leader finally concede? We tell you more.
Six months ago, Erdogan's electoral defeat would have sounded like a fictional story. In power for over 2 decades, he wiped out most of his opposition. His policies rarely left scope for criticism, and he virtually ensured that there was no face big enough to replace him. Cut to 2 weeks ago, when Erdogan fell ill in the middle of a live broadcast. He was giving a televised interview, and during the nearly 20-minute window when the president was missing, people got a whiff of what the world might be like without Recep Tayyip Erdogan in control. And when the question arises, does the Turkish citizen want to call time out to Erdogan's rule?
There has been one government for the last 20 years. The first 10 years were successful. But in the last 10 years, he has veered, of course. We can call it power poisoning. The economic crisis that has recently developed has affected us deeply, very, very much.
Erdogan is seeking re-election in crucial polls on the 14th of May. On his side is a loyal fan base that says he transformed Turkey from a country with little international clout to a regional powerhouse at the crossroads of East and West. In his early years as leader, he championed reforms that turned Ankara into a model democracy for the Muslim world. Working against him, a feeling that he has turned into an increasingly authoritarian figure and suppressed dissent to consolidate power. While all things international prop up in his support, it is the House that is calling for a change. Erdogan faces domestic challenges big enough to make this poll seem like a referendum on his power.
For the first time in the 20 years that Erdogan came to power, he is facing a real electoral challenge, which he may actually lose. So that makes these elections significant.
Taking him on is 74-year-old Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, the leader of the secular center-left Republican People's Party. He is the joint candidate of a six-party alliance that has vowed to dismantle an executive presidential system that Erdogan installed. He promises to return the country to a parliamentary democracy with checks and balances. And as unprecedented as it may sound, it seems like Turkey wants a change. Polls have given Kılıçdaroğlu a slight lead over Erdogan, who has lost some ground amid public outcry over a faltering economy and a cost of living crisis. While political fervor charges in Ankara, critics draw parallels with the circumstances that brought his Islamist-rooted AK party to power in 2002. It was also an election shaped by high inflation and economic turmoil.
We have never forgotten those dark days in prison. We have never forgotten the conscientious stance our people took against the injustice done to us. We have never forgotten the tears shed by hundreds of thousands when they were sending us off to prison.
And Erdogan, an infamously passionate politician and campaigner, is not new to the high stakes. He is a leader who once served a prison sentence for reciting a religious poem.
I've been convicted because I recited a poem. First of all, I want to say this is a tragedy, a shameful chapter in our nation's judicial history.
He survived an attempted military coup in 2016, when rogue soldiers attacked parliament and killed 250 people. He is a man of humble beginnings that charted his path as a political giant. With whatever critique one might have, Recep Tayyip Erdogan has undeniably shaped Turkey more than any leader since Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the revered father of the modern republic.
And now to the Gulf part of West Asia. The Gulf nations, well, they have tourism sectors that are big. They fuel their economies. And now to boost these sectors further, they are debating an idea, a joint visa. A joint visa between the Gulf nations that could allow people to smoothly travel in the region. Will it work? We tell you more.
The Gulf has always been a hot vacation destination. Every year, regardless of the season, people travel to the region to spend their days in luxury. And now, taking the tourism idea a bit forward, the Gulf countries are reportedly looking at launching a Schengen-style visa. The permit will allow border-free travel among GCC countries. These are Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, UAE, Qatar and Saudi Arabia. The plan for a unified visa system was revealed during a meeting at this year's Arabian travel market held in Dubai. The Khalij Times reports that speaking during the event, the tourism minister of Bahrain, Fatima Al-Zarafi, said that GCC member nations have been discussing ways to achieve a unified visa. The idea is simple. When traveling to the Gulf, people do not stay in one country. It is often a tour of a few nations. So why not make the process easier and add value to the entire region? Apart from oil, travel adds big numbers to Gulf economies. Abdullah Al-Saleh, UAE's Under-Secretary for the Ministry of Economy, also said that members of the Gulf Cooperation Council have one common market and unified policies. And in the tourism sector, members can benefit from both the supply and demand sides. They can have an umbrella regulations, policies and procedures to facilitate growth. The idea is currently in the works, might prove to be a game changer for the Gulf. Tourism is no longer bound to countries, regions and experiences have replaced it. And what better than a unified permit to cut the hassle and also attract more people? Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Question marks remain over the future of Lionel Messi. There are rumors afloat that the football legend might soon be joining the Saudi Pro League. Now the question is, are these just bogus rumors, or will Lionel Messi be making the switch soon? We tell you more.
Saudi Arabia is backing the breakaway Live Golf League. It already hosts motorsport's most grueling event, the Dakar Rally. An Asian Games is coming its way in 2030. But an even bigger coup is in the offing. Cristiano Ronaldo is already playing in the Saudi Premier League. His great rival Lionel Messi is now sitting on a bumper contract that is, as we just said, bumper. $400 million a year.
This Messi deal, I would consider this a privilege, not only for Al Hilal, but for the whole Saudi League and for Saudi soccer. I expect this will be one of the strongest leagues in the world, the Saudi League, especially with all the developments we have seen in the sport. This is an honor for all Arabs, not just for Saudis.
So how did Saudi Arabia, a footballing outpost, get in the market for the biggest free transfer in the world? It all started with a trip to the kingdom, of course. Messi is a brand ambassador of Saudi tourism and flew down to Riyadh after his current team, Paris Saint-Germain's loss to Lorient in the French League. He had a day off and his family accompanied him on the trip as well, with photos soon going viral. But only when he was in the air did Messi realize that his boss, Christophe Galtier, had cancelled the off and called the team in for training. There was no turning back, literally. PSG threw the rule book, banned Messi for 2 weeks, and effectively told him his career was over. Messi returned to a storm of protests from PSG fans and issued this apology to his teammates.
I sincerely believed that I would have the day off after the game, as had been happening in previous weeks. I had planned this trip to Arabia, which had been cancelled previously, and this time I could not. I repeat again, sorry for what I did, and I'm waiting for what the club decides.
It's proved to be the final nail in the coffin. Just 6 months ago, Qatar ruler Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani mounted a PR exercise on the biggest stage in world football by draping Messi in the traditional Arab beast. Sheikh Tamim is effectively Messi's super boss, as PSG are owned by the Qatar Investment Authority. A 1-year extension to the existing deal was agreed upon, but now both sides want to move on. enter the Saudis.
It is a nice thing to see Messi playing here. The young players will learn from him. He will raise the level of Saudi sports and will also secure traction for Saudi sports. People will see how much Saudi sports have developed.
Financial fair play doesn't apply in the Pro League. Al Nassr are paying Ronaldo $220 million a year reportedly. Messi is the reigning World Player of the Year. He just won a World Cup. And he also was crowned Sportsman of the Year at the Laureus Awards. Hence the $400 million offer, which sent rumour mills into overdrive. So much so that the player's father, Jorge Messi, had to officially release a statement that the Saudi deal wasn't done yet and no decision would be announced before the season ended. This just isn't a footballing matter. There are geopolitical factors at play. Qatar has stolen a march in the Persian Gulf by pulling off an immensely successful Football World Cup. And the PSG roster currently has Messi, Neymar and Kylian Mbappe, three of the greatest talents of the modern era. The Saudis want to host the Football World Cup as well, with a rumoured bid on its way for the 2030 edition. All existing sporting initiatives are regularly brushed aside as sport washing by the Western world. Getting Messi on board would weaken that trust. After all, Messi and Ronaldo playing against each other one final time is the ultimate PR coup. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
That's all we have for you on this episode of the West Asia Post. I will see you next week with a fresh new lineup of stories, news, developments from one of the world's most volatile regions. Until then, stay safe. I am Radi Francis coming to you from Lebanon, and you're watching WION World is One.
Tells you stories which others won't. And tonight we will tell you about this new strategic map that is being drawn.
They say your enemy's enemy is your friend. Is that the foundation of the new defense bridge between India and America?
This is what separates us from others who claim to be telling you global stories that matter. In the last 3 days, WION has been traveling across Syria. You are in Latakia city right now. Tell us, what is the situation on ground? At Gravitas, we don't just tell you stories from selected countries from around the world.
2 years since the Myanmar military coup, the people of Myanmar continue to live in a nightmare.
Because it does not suit their propaganda, or because they are too scared to speak truth to power.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yo1.com